So I'm live but flustered. I've just had a phone call to juggle. So yeah, that's what real life is about, isn't it? Juggling phone calls and things. So it is now 6 o'clock, and tonight is a fluster. Hello, and thank you for watching and hopefully joining me in this wine and book live. I've got wine tonight. I've eaten during the day, and wishing you lots of health, wealth, happiness, and entertainment. So, right, wine and a book, part of Indie Author Week UK, and celebrating independent authors. One of the beauties of being an independent author is you don't actually have to justify your right to write anything. You can just write. So tonight is a foray into a portrait that has been in the wider family for over 100 years at least, and was reportedly a Velázquez painting. We think probably because somebody picked it up in Italy, and a lot of the paintings that were around at the time that it was picked up were reported to be by Velázquez. So the book that I'm working on, which will be the one after Francis Rose, is all about the research is to do with trying to find out more about the painting and about the subject, and the journey that those investigations have involved. Spoiler alert, she wasn't by Velázquez, but anyway, still finding out what Velázquez was doing in Italy at the time she would have been painted was great fun, and him meeting out with Galileo Galilei and staying in the Duke of Tuscany's villa in Rome at the time that he should have been in Florence painting her, but the plague had done a whole load of trouble. Anyway, so the subject is Medici Princess. Her name was Maria Cristina de Medici, and she was born on the 24th of August 1609, and sadly died only a couple of decades later at the age of 21 or 22. I say 21. Anyway, on the 9th of August 1632. It's not clear whether it was through complications of the plague or whether because she was actually always rather a poorly child. So out in the big wide world, at the Kunsthistorischen Museum in Vienna, a painting of her in 1613 showing, I'm not actually going to show the portrait. Where are we? See the dirtiness on my screen. She was a really, really charming figure. And the theory was that she might have had a hunchback. She had the Habsburg jaw, which is the misalignment, so chewing was always difficult for Habsburg people. And she was a princess of Tuscany, and her life was full of event. So what I'm going to do is romp through a chapter I haven't yet structured, which is all about significant events that happened in the years that she was alive, because actually it's partly it's to do with the Renaissance, but also it's just incredible. We live in a time we think is there's a great deal of change going on. There was a scale of change that we can't even consider going on in those years and the years before. There was a lot of change going on there because they were going from so little knowledge to so much in a very short time. So our Stephen Hawking's and all of that are built on a lot of the things that were going on in those years. So there is a British slant to what I've listed. There is an international slant, of course, as well. It's probably not as much an Italian slant because I'm trying to do the context and try not to stutter too much too. Right, so events in, it's going to be a list, but hopefully it's a fascinating list. I find it a fascinating list. 1609, one of the first newspapers was launched in the Holy Roman Empire. The truce between Spain and the Netherlands took place in their 80 Years' War, which ties into the fact that the Netherlands was Spanish and remained Habsburg until 1714. In August, Galileo exhibited his first telescope in Venice, and that was the month that she was born. Hudson explored the area north of New York. 3 Blind Mice was published. Tea came to Europe. Johannes Kepler published the first of his 2 laws of planetary motion. Rubens was appointed the court painter to the Spanish Netherlands, and although the court was at Brussels, Rubens spent most of his time in Antwerp. Henrietta Maria, the daughter of Marie de Medici, the Queen of France, later to become Queen of Charles I, mother of Charles II and James II, was born. Henrietta Maria was, I think, first cousin once removed for Maria Cristina de Medici. So Marie de Medici was her great aunt. So her great aunt's daughter. I was trying to work it out based on my own family. Ferdinand I de Medici died. He was Maria's grandfather, Christina's grandfather. Cosimo II became Grand Duke that year, and he was Christina's father. The Spanish Inquisition was still a feature of the religious landscape, which reflected how Europe was at that time. Certainly Southern Europe was at that time, because the sorry, the computer's just done some sort of weird cleanup thing. The battle between Catholicism and Protestantism in the north of Europe down to the south of Europe, and all the stuff to do with the Spanish Inquisition. Christina's family were, particularly her mother and her grandmother, were very, very devout Catholics, and they deplored what was going on in the Protestant areas. Right, so in 1610, Galileo observed the moons of Jupiter, and in order to get some funding from the Grand Duke, he called them the Medici moons, which they remained and pretty much until he died, and when they went back to being called Galileo moons. Henry IV of France was assassinated. That was Marie de Medici's husband. Monteverdi's Vespers were published in Venice. Jamestown in America, I've written USA, but of course it wasn't USA, was abandoned. John Guy set sail for Newfoundland. Louis XIII was crowned in France, so that was Henrietta Maria's brother. Santa Fe was founded in New Mexico. Ferdinando II de Medici, that's Christina's brother, later to become Grand Duke of Tuscany, was born. Caravaggio died in eastern Tuscany. In 1611, sunspots were observed by several with telescopes. My notes say, did they go blind? did they have anybody actually making recommendations about using bits of paper with holes in or anything like we have with the eclipse? The authorized King James Bible was published in England and Scotland and Wales and Ireland, I suppose, yes. Hudson disappeared after a mutiny up in the north. And of course, Hudson's Bay was named after him. Tobacco was imported to Britain by John Rolfe. Giancarlo de' Medici, later to become a cardinal, was born. Pope Innocent XI was born, but he wasn't a Medici, I don't think. Maybe he was. This is fun. D'Artagnan was born, the real D'Artagnan. His actual name was Charles de Batz de Castlemore. I don't know how you do that in French. And he was nicknamed D'Artagnan. And of course, he was the young sort of fourth musketeer in the Three Musketeers. 1612, all things started going on in the Holy Roman Empire with Rudolph II dying and Matthias becoming the Holy Roman Emperor. Now, his nephew, Ferdinand, was Christina's mother's father, so Christina's grandfather. Her mother was Maria Maddalena, and she was a very devout Catholic. And she was the youngest daughter of Charles II, who was to become a devout Catholic, anti-Protestant Holy Roman Emperor after Matthias. Her siblings, so these are the aunts and uncles of Christina, were Anne, Queen of Poland and Sweden, Maria Christina, Princess of Transylvania, Archduchess Catherine Renata of Austria, Ferdinand II, the Holy Roman Emperor, Archduchess Gregoria Maximiliana of Austria. So archduchesses were the pseudo-princesses, I suppose. Archduchess of Eleanor, not all of them married, quite a lot of them, because the Habsburgs were really into interbreeding. This affected both the Spanish, the Austrian, the Holy Roman Emperor, and the Medici inheritances, all to do with the Habsburg jaw and other health things. So that's going into the book as well. Margaret, Queen of Spain, Leopold V, Archduke, Constance, Queen of Poland, and Charles, Bishop of Wrocław is Polish, or Breslau in German. I did try and Wrocław. Anyway, doesn't matter. So yeah, the very, very, very heavily connected to royal houses all over the place. Shah Jahan married Mumtaz Mahal in India. Galileo observed Neptune. Margherita de' Medici was born. That was so. Maria Maddalena was hatching a sprog every year at this point. Robert Cecil, our spy master, or Queen Elizabeth's spy master, died. And so did Prince Henry Frederick, Charles I's older brother, which meant that we ended up with Charles I and all the fun and games that brought. 1613 was the start of the Romanov dynasty in Russia. Pocahontas was captured to hold for ransom. The Globe Theatre burned down in London. The Sicilians defeated the Ottomans. André Lenotre was born, the garden designer. Another brother was born, Matthias de' Medici. He became the governor of Siena. In 1614, duels in England and Britain were condemned by James I. Pocahontas married John Rolfe, who brought in tobacco. Logarithms and decimal points were discovered by John Napier and used by Johannes Kepler to start describing the solar system. Probably the decimal point and the definition of zero have both been the most significant contributions to mathematics and physics ever, because without the decimal point, zero, and then infinity, it would be extremely difficult. So, but logarithms, that's quite something. Another brother, and El Greco died. 1615, not much happened that year. Not that I found, anyway. Probably did. 1616, Johannes Kepler was charged with witchcraft in Württemberg. Willem Schouten rounds Cape Horn successfully. Walter Raleigh goes off in search of El Dorado. Shakespeare dies. The second recorded landfall in Australia by Dirk Hartog from the Netherlands was made. Cardinal Richelieu becomes French Secretary of State. Week-long festivities to honour the Prince of Urbano of the Barberini family took place in Florence. The earliest permanent settlement of Maine in America. The first African slaves were taken to Bermuda. Coffee moves about the place a bit. Blood circulation was described by William Harvey. John Speed published his Atlas of Britain, which some of the maps included roads. Roads were quite rare on early maps. Christoph Scheiner begins his campaign against Galileo. Istanbul's Blue Mosque is completed. Another sister, and Nicholas Culpeper, the herbalist, is born. Then in 1617, Marie de Medici was exiled by her 17-year-old son, Louis XIII. Leopoldo de Medici became a cardinal, and Pocahontas died. In 1618 was the start of the 30 Years' War, was triggered by Ferdinand II, who would later be the Holy Roman Emperor and was the father of oh, I don't know. It might have been the brother. There was the brother. So Christina's uncle triggered the 30 Years' War. The siblings used to send portraits to each other into the different royal courts. So the Spanish court and the Austrian court and the court in Florence. They used portraits like we use photographs or putting things on Facebook or something like that. Sir Walter Raleigh was beheaded for treason. Osman II becomes Sultan of the Ottoman Empire following deposing of his uncle Mustafa I. In 1619, Inigo Jones was commissioned to replace Whitehall's banqueting house. The Holy Roman Emperor Matthias died in March, so Ferdinand became the Holy Roman Emperor in August. He was elected. The first African slaves went to the British colony in Virginia. Peace broke out between mother and son, Marie de Medici and Louis XIII. 38 colonists disembarked in Berkeley Hundred, Virginia. Their thanks to God is one of the considered candidates for the first Thanksgiving in America. A whaling settlement was founded in Svalbard, Spitsbergen. A Spanish expedition sailed around Tierra del Fuego. Cyrano de Bergerac was born. Anne of Denmark, wife of James I in Britain, died. In 1620, the Mayflower set sail for New England, arriving finally in November-December. The River Thames froze. Cornelis Drebbel demonstrated the first navigable undersea boat in the Thames when it wasn't frozen. The modern violin was developed. Juan Pablo Bonet developed a sign language for deaf children. And John Evelyn, another garden writer, was born. Do you have a bit of an interest in garden writers? 1621, Pope Gregory the 15th succeeds Pope Paul V. I've hardly got anywhere, have I? Miles Standish was the first commander of the Plymouth colony Mayflower people. Philip IV of Spain began to rule. He was married to another sister of Christina's mother, her aunt. The 80 Years' War resumed. The first treaty came with Native Americans. There were Huguenot rebellions going on all over the place. In October, the first known Thanksgiving proper was given to celebrate the harvest in Plymouth. Celsius was born. William Penn was born of Pennsylvania. Pope Paul V dies. Cosimo II de' Medici died, and Philip III of Spain died. So Philip III of Spain had to die for Philip IV of Spain to become king. And Cosimo II, of course, was Christina's father. So her brother Ferdinando became the Grand Duke. 1623, January the 1st becomes the first day of the year. James I of England disbands Parliament. Algonquian natives kill 347 English settlers in the Jamestown Massacre, beginning the American Indian Wars. The Ottoman Sultan Osman II is strangled by rebels. Armand Jean du Plessis becomes Cardinal Richelieu, made famous in the Three Musketeers. And history, of course. First record of bottled spring water was made at Holywell, Malvern. Molière was born. Vittoria della Rovere was born, and she went on to become Christina's sister-in-law, married to Ferdinando II. 1623, the first American temperance law in Virginia. Piracy heyday started. The Dutch sailed to Peru looking for Spanish treasure. Pope Urban VIII succeeds Pope Gregory XV. Murat IV succeeds Mustafa I as Ottoman Emperor. They went through quite a lot of Ottoman emperors in this time. The first folio of Shakespeare's plays was published. Wilhelm Schickard invented the calculating clock, which was an early mechanical calculator. Anne Hathaway, Shakespeare's wife, died, widow. 1624, Virginia becomes a royal colony. Dutch settlers arrive in New Netherlands, New York, New Jersey. Cardinal Richelieu becomes chief minister to Louis XIII. The Tuscan papal Neapolitan galley fleet defeat the Algerians near Sardinia, so the Algerians were now on the map. Denmark starts a postal service. The Palace of Versailles is started by Louis XIII as a hunting lodge. Franz Hals paints the Laughing Cavalier. The Lutheran Bible was burned by order of the Pope, and George Fox, founder of the Quakers, was born. We went on to be founder of the Quakers, obviously. 1625, there were more Huguenot battles. Charles I succeeds James I, and so Henrietta Maria, who marries him later that year, she's a Catholic, becomes queen. Parliament restricts Charles's right to collect customs duties. Barbary pirates enslave 60 Cornish people. England and Dutch Republic sign a treaty against Spain. 16 rabbis are imprisoned in Jerusalem. The Huguenot leader flees to England. Major flooding in the Thames Basin ties in with the stuff that my grandfather worked on to do with Ford Powerhouse, actually, for Muden. English colony starts in Barbados. 1626, Henrietta Maria refuses to be crowned as it is a non-Catholic ceremony. Oops. Peter Minuit of New Netherlands buys Manhattan from a Native American tribe for approximately 60 guilders. Charles I dissolves Parliament. The new St. Peter's Basilica at the Vatican is consecrated 1300 years after the first, 326. AD 326. The tyrannical governor Pasha Muhammad Ibn Farouk of Jerusalem is forced out. John Aubrey is born, and Richard Cromwell is born, Oliver Cromwell's son. First recorded sighting of the South Australian coast took place in 1627. Barbary pirates raid Iceland. The economic collapse in Habsburg Spain started. Black gunpowder was first used in mining in Slovakia. Robert Boyle, the physicist, was born. John Ray, the English biologist, was born. 1628, Shah Jahan was crowned as Mughal emperor in Agra. Charles I issues writs that every English county pays ship tax. Oliver Cromwell enters Parliament as member for Huntingdon, the new father. Charles reconvenes Parliament and compromises to gain subsidies. George Villiers, Duke of Buckingham, is assassinated by John Felton. The first black slaves arrive in Dutch Manhattan. John Bunyan is born. Pilgrim's Progress. The events of the Three Musketeers are set in 1628, in spite of the fact that D'Artagnan himself was only born a few years earlier and certainly wasn't quite old enough to be swashbuckling. So that, of course, is the book rather than the true story. 1629, the true story is interesting enough. 1629, circa 350 English Puritans sail for Massachusetts Bay Colony, which is granted a royal charter. Ferdinand II, Holy Roman Emperor, issues the Edict of Restitution, ordering the restoration of Catholic properties lost to the Protestants. So continuing his family's very strong Catholic interests. Charles I dissolves Parliament, beginning 11 years of tyranny where there was no Parliament and ceding things for the Civil War. Huguenot rebellions end. They are allowed religious freedom but lose political, territorial and military rights. The plague arrives in Milan. Actresses are banned in Japan. 1630, popcorn is introduced to the English colonists. There's an earthquake in Crete. Quite a lot of numbers forebear, Alexander Leighton, was brought before Archbishop Laud for sedition, pilloried and whipped, ears cropped, nose slit, and branded with SS for sower of sedition. Although not all of that took place, the Long Parliament did pardon him before they damaged him too much. He went on to do some quite amazing things, I think. Italian plague reaches Venice in July. Central square of Covent Garden is laid out and the market begins in London. Charles II is born with Henrietta Maria as his. Does that make Christina his second or third cousin? I think it's his second cousin. Third cousin. Anyway, Thomas Walsingham dies. Johannes Kepler dies, the mathematician. 1631, the first French newspaper, La Gazette, is founded. The death of Mumtaz Mahal in childbirth causes Shah Jahan, her husband, to commission the Taj Mahal as a mausoleum, and work starts in 1632. Algerian pirates attack County Cork. Mount Vesuvius erupts in December. John Murray, 1st Marquess of Atholl, is born. John Dryden is born. John Donne died. The Duke of Urbino died. And Mummy Maria Magdalena of Austria dies, almost certainly from the plague. 1632, or stress induced by the plague. 1632, Galileo published Dialogue Concerning the Two Chief World Systems, which got him into trouble. Maryland is given a royal charter and named after Henrietta Maria. Gustavus Adolphus, King of Sweden, is killed in a battle of the 30 Years' War. Antigua and Barbuda are first colonized by the English. Christopher Wren is born. John Locke is born. And Johannes Vermeer, the artist, is born. The 30 Years' War went from 1618 to 1648. The Italian plague, which was bubonic, was brought to Mantua by troops moving around in the 30 Years' War. It was relaxed during the carnival, and that led to a surge in the number of deaths. Whether or not Christina's death is related to the plague is not clear. She had almost certainly got a heart condition and some scoliosis probably as well. There's work being done in the tombs of the Medici family, and they've been doing some really quite interesting scientific biological studies on the diseases that the Medici family and the Habsburg families would have had, and there is plenty of evidence to show what she probably had. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you have managed to stick with this, it's really fascinating what can happen when you look at those years. The Galileo business is extraordinary. Anyway, wishing you all the very best of health, wealth, happiness, and entertainment. And tomorrow night, it's tithe maps to do with churches. Thank you. And good night.